everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Marley Long, and I'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Today's webinar is going to focus around the 5 steps to take before migrating to SharePoint Online, as well as how you can leverage analytics to improve the migration process. A bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. If you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who's signed up, and we'll send you the recording. And we are on Twitter, so feel free to tweet us during the webinar. You can tweet us at Cardiolog, and you can tweet Knut at SharePTKARM. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll leave about 10 minutes towards the end of the webinar for questions, and you can send these questions through the questions box within the GoToWebinar panel. In regards for the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll talk a bit about Interlock and who we are, and then we'll introduce our guest speaker today. And then we'll conclude to talk about how we can leverage analytics to solve migration challenges. And as I mentioned, we'll have some time towards the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can send them through the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll get to these at the end of our session today. Brief introduction. Interlock's been around for about 10 years now, since 2005. We're based out of Boston. Over the past 10 years, we've focused on web analytics designed for SharePoint. Our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics, and it's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 03 to 2013, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools, and the like. Our goal is to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. So there are 3 main pillars we talk to customers about. The first is monitor, which is tracking the usage within SharePoint. The second is engaging users, asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And the third, the most important pillar, is enhance. We want to make sure we're constantly improving SharePoint based on those 3 pillars. And the idea is to have actionable metrics, which will allow us to constantly make SharePoint better for our users. And with that, we'll jump right on in. I want to introduce you to our speaker today, Knut Relbe. Knut, thanks so much for taking the time today to join us.
Thank you so much, Molly, for having me. So we look forward to this.
So I'm going to go ahead and make you a presenter, and we'll just jump right into it.
Perfect. And I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, if you can see it, everyone else can see it. So yeah, I want just to say thank you to everyone who is attending this webinar today, and I will talk to you about the 5 steps we should need to take before you can actually start migrating your SharePoint on-prem environment to SharePoint Online. So for me, this is kind of an interesting topic. Microsoft these days is talking about cloud, cloud, cloud. So everybody else needs to jump on board that ship, so to say. So hopefully after this session today, you will have some more ideas about how you can help your customers or your organization to move all your environment to SharePoint or online to the cloud, or just maybe some parts of it. So a brief introduction to myself. I currently work as a Chief Technical Architect for Knowledge Factory based in Oslo, Norway. I'm an Office 365 MVP, I'm a migration expert, and that's why I'm talking for you guys today. And I'm also like a Nintex vertical technical evangelist. So I've been running around talking about SharePoint for quite some time, and have worked with SharePoint since the 2003 version, so I have been around for some time. So please follow me on Twitter, and on the bottom of the screen you can see my blog as well, so please go in and check. I will blog about this webinar afterwards. Also, will put up my slides on SlideShare for you to have. So I'm as I mentioned, Office 365 MVP, and I'm also a certified solution expert when it comes to SharePoint. So this is a little bit about my view. On the screen here you can see this is my office over here, so it's kind of looks really, really nice. It's like brand new building in Oslo. So if you come to Oslo, you should stop by my office for sure. And then the big question these days is about move to cloud or not. That is the big question. And this is the question a lot of customers asking me. What do you think, Knut? Do you think that we should move to the cloud or not? Shall we start to use SharePoint Online, or shall we still go on SharePoint 2013? Or what about SharePoint 2016? So there's a lot of questions. So everybody, of course, is thinking that the move to cloud is easy. It's actually not that difficult. But the thing that people usually is forgetting is how can you actually make sure that you move with success? How can you make sure that your end users and everybody which use your SharePoint environment will be still satisfied after you have finished with the move? So this is actually the key pointers of this session today, is that I will talk a little bit about 5 steps which you can use yourself to actually achieve success on your migration journey, so to say. Let's just jump straight into step number 1 in my world. And you should, don't forget, we are the ones with the budget. If IT can't deliver, we will go around them. This is a business lead, major retail in Australia, which I have been saying. And of course, what does this mean? That means the fact that if you should migrate your SharePoint environment, or any other environment for that to say, you need to involve the business. This is like number 1 success criteria in my world, at least, because usually many of the projects which I've been working on have been driven by the IT department. They have been on some kind of course somewhere, or they have been to Ignite or some other big event, and have seen all the new cool features of the new SharePoint version, or so to say, and everybody wants, oh yeah, let's upgrade. But then people usually start to forget about the fact that everything needs to be ensured by the business. If the business doesn't, if it doesn't involve the business, then probably somewhere down the road you will have some problems with your end result. So step number 1, you need really, really much to involve the business and get them on board, get them to understand the importance of running in cloud, understand the aspect of running in the cloud, what that means for the business, the upsides and the downsides, and then you can actually start thinking about moving to the cloud. So step number 1 to ensure your migration success is to involve the business. Maybe it sounds easy, but in some ways it is easy, because you just need to set up some workshops, you need to set up some meetings, you need to explain to the business the differences between the old version and the new version. For instance, if you look at SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013, or if you look at SharePoint 2013 on-premise and then SharePoint online, you can actually find some key pointers which you can actually say to your business decision makers. For instance, on SharePoint online, you can say that it's much easier to actually open up for external users to come into your projects to work together with you. Everything there is set up already for you. You can just start to use it. So that is like one thing which is good. The other thing is good is that everything new comes first in the cloud. So if you want to be like an adopter of the new things coming, then of course the cloud is the way to go. So that's just 2 key pointers just out of my head right there. So this is what you need to do. You need to find the business goals and for the business to actually use the latest version of the technology. And just imagine also, usually on the on-prem environment, usually we have everything behind like a firewall or something. You need maybe to access your SharePoint environment or intranet from VPN or Citrix or something. if you actually move everything to Office 365 and SharePoint Online, you don't need to have those things up and running. You can still set up two-phase authentication, so everything will still be safe and secure. So this is like things you can actually talk about with your business users, with your business decision makers, to make them to commit also to the migration process. So hopefully you will save some questions for later for the Q&A. It's like I will just talk and talk now, and then hopefully we'll have some questions for me later. If not, you don't have anything now, but it will be something you will come up with like in a couple of hours or something. Just email me or write me a message on Twitter, and I will give you the answers you look for. So step number 2, of course, maybe some of you have guessed it already, since we should involve the business user to have a success. We also need to think about who did we actually forget now, who is actually all the time forgotten when it comes to IT projects or migration projects. It's the users, it's the end users. The user is actually to sit and use the solution which we are creating. They usually is forgotten. They just someone just decide that today we should migrate from Lotus Notes to SharePoint Online, and they say, okay, yes, perfect, I have a system that is already working, so why shall I migrate, or why shall I get something new? So of course this is like the big work you have in any migration project. You need actually to involve your users as well, because if the user doesn't like what you will give them, they will find something else. So what are the characteristics of the end users when it comes to a migration project? They're usually satisfied with the system they have. They don't want a new system. For them, the new system is an enemy. They are used to what they have. They don't want to learn anything new. So, and of course, it also works. Magically, it always works. The old system was always working better than the new. It's just how it is. So, and of course, the end user, they are resisting changes. They are like used to working in one way. They don't want to change how they work. And of course, they really don't want that new system because the old system they had was working. It will probably require more from them. They need to learn something new. They need to work harder, and people don't like that. So you should not forget that when you come in and should help like a customer with migrating, or if you should help your own organization, don't forget the end users. It's really easy to get them on board. You just need to know how. So how can we solve this? We need to involve the end users with testing. We involve them with training. We need to provide some guidance and business process inputs. So they should actually, you should actually run some workshops involving the end users and showing them what the changes will be, and then they can be allowed to come up with some inputs on that, which you will take on board and implement. And of course, the most important thing of all, you need to get some super users, some SharePoint superheroes, as I'm liking to call it. You need to have some users that is actually just digging or loving the system you have, which can actually help you on talking about the system with the rest of your company. If you have some SharePoint superheroes, all SharePoint projects or migration projects or any other project will go that much easier. So you need to get some people on board, some end users on board, which actually starts to use the system really early, and you will be like part of the project from the day one to the finishing project, because then they will get involved. They will be much more acceptable of changes if they're involved. So this is something you really need to do. So the more you involve people in the process, the more likely they are to accept the results. That's actually true. So kind of strange, but it's the easy way of success. It's the recipe of success. So don't forget that. Don't forget to involve the business users, the business decision makers, and the end users. So step number 2 is involving the end users. That leaves 3 more steps before you actually have like the possibility to move your SharePoint solution, your SharePoint environment to the cloud. So step number 3, everyone. Now we're starting to talk more about the key aspects of the migrating process in details. So of course you need to decide on what shall you move. You need to decide, shall you move all your SharePoint environment to the cloud? Shall you move all your IT environment to the cloud, or shall you just move some of it or some parts of it? This is actually the big question, and this is a question you need to figure out the answer to really early in the process, because the longer you wait with figuring out this question, the more time your project will take, and most likely you will have to do things twice or more than twice. So, and of course, many companies which are meeting many customers are saying, we are not ready for the cloud. Why shall we move to the cloud? What is in it for me? What will the cloud give me? And of course, the list is really long, but when it comes to SharePoint, you have 2 pointers, which is really, really important. And the one is the fact that Onedrive for Business is giving you a lot of data which you can store inside of SharePoint Online, inside of Office 365. So that, of course, is one of the big selling points. And the other part is if you already have like an Office 365 enterprise license that is including on-premise SharePoint enterprise license. So by this, you can also actually, by going to the cloud, you can actually have some things running in the cloud and some things running on your on-prem environment. So at least you should, instead of saying yourself, we don't want to move to the cloud, you should maybe ask yourself the question in the other way, why should we move to the cloud? So turn the question upside down. But of course, as a consultant like I am, I get this question all the time with the fact that, oh, yeah, but we need to have control over where our data is stored. We need to be able to get them whenever we want. Is it secure enough inside Office 365? And all these questions we get all the time. So, and the answer is yes, is it secure enough? Yes, the security is really important for Microsoft. Yes, can you move to the cloud? Most likely you can. At least you can move some parts to the cloud. So this is actually not a problem because the solution is already there. You can actually just move some parts. You don't need to move all your SharePoint environment from day one. You can just start with moving some parts of it. And that is actually, you can move some other parts of your Microsoft environment. You can, for instance, move Exchange to Exchange Online. Many of my customers is doing that. The first thing they move to the cloud is Exchange. You can move your Skype for Business to Office 365. You can move your SharePoint environment to Office 365, or you can move your Active Directory to Microsoft Azure, or you can move your local file share to OneDrive, or your local SharePoint My Sites to OneDrive or Office 365. Or you can just move some of it, not all of it, with a hybrid solution. And this is actually where I can see the future. The future will actually be hybrid. It will be much more and more hybrid solutions out there, where you actually have some of your environment running on your own service in your secure data center, and you will run other parts of it in Microsoft Office 365 or Azure data centers. Because then you can actually take the best from both worlds and you will get the best solution for you. Because maybe the best solution for you is not to move everything to the cloud or have everything running on premise. So the step number 3 in the migration process is actually need to decide which parts to move to the cloud. Usually what I say to my customers is usually the OneDrive for Business is the first thing you should actually think about moving to the cloud, because you get that much data in Office 365, which actually is worth a lot for you as a customer. And of course I will at the same point in time move Exchange to the cloud, because actually a lot of my customers is still on Exchange 2010, and it will be like a really big step up for them to move everything to Exchange Online instead. and start to use some services there. And of course, you also have a newsfeed in SharePoint 2013. Shall you use the newsfeed service, or shall you use the Yammer services? Of course, Yammer is a cloud service and will always be a cloud service. So already with Yammer, if you use Yammer together with SharePoint, you already have a hybrid solution set up for you. So then you can ask yourself, why can't I use some more things inside Office 365? And the first thing I will start to use is OneDrive for Business. And OneDrive for Business is like the perfect thing for every company to start with if they don't have SharePoint already, because that will actually help the end user to be more productive. It's like productivity for the end users. Instead of having all the documents stored on your own computer, you can have everything synchronized and backed up in the Office 365 cloud, which will be a lot better for your organization, because then your documents wouldn't be lost in case the computer crashes. And of course, when it comes to sending emails, instead of sending all those attachments, you can upload your files to OneDrive for Business instead, and then you can just email the link to your end users. And how many of us haven't sent also an email to the wrong recipients? And of course, if you is using then OneDrive for Business and just emailing the link, you can easily remove the rights to the file after you have sent it. So by this, maybe is less chance of someone get like a file that wasn't intended to have in the first place. So this is like really much part of a migration journey. All the time you need to decide which part shall you move to the cloud. Someone will say that the big document library on the project sites and team sites can't be moved to the cloud. It's too much terabytes, it's too much gigabytes. And maybe it is, but at least you can start with moving some of your solutions to the cloud. And that is what I want you to take from this session today. You should go back and think, is it some things from my SharePoint environment that I can move to the cloud, which will be better for the end users. And of course, when you have decided what to move to the cloud, the next step, of course, will be to analyze your SharePoint 2013 environment or your SharePoint 2010 environment to see how much data do I really have here. How can I move this data to SharePoint, or shall I have it locally still? How shall I do this? How much data do I have? How much different site collections and so on do I have? So this is something you need to do. And some of the different third-party vendors out there, they are giving like great tools to analyze the data, so you will actually get good reports on everything you need. So this is something you need to create before you start the migration journey. You need to create an inventory. You need to know which sites do I have, which site template do they have, and so on and so forth, and how many sub-sites, which user rights and so on do I have on my site structure. So of course, what is the characteristics of a typical migration project? As you will guess, it's usually one site collection. And if you will have like a two-way communication, I will of course ask you guys, is it good, is it best practice to have like a one site collection? It's probably not, of course it's not. So if you come in and you do like an analysis of the data of your customers or your organization and you see that it's one site collection, it should ring a bell in your head which says to you that this we need to change. It's usually a really complex structure because you had like a great idea when you were starting to build up the SharePoint site, and then everything was just going from there to there, and yeah, in the end it was chaos, so to say. And of course you have really many sub-sites, which is also not best practice. And believe it or not, many places where I was doing migration project, the same document is stored in multiple locations, even inside SharePoint. So it didn't become any better than the local file server. You just moved everything to SharePoint and continued to work in the wrong way. So that is something you should always think about when it comes to a migration project. You should look at it as an opportunity to clean up your SharePoint installation and your environment. So of course, how to solve this? You should recreate your site structure. recreate it so it will be best practice. You should implement some governance. So you will have some governance on how long should the site be valid for, how should the retention policies be, and so on, who should be like the site owner, who should have control of the site, and so on and so forth. And of course, you should also run a security check when you do a migration project, because maybe security wasn't set up perfectly in the old SharePoint farm. And of course, the reason why people start to move to SharePoint is because they want to find the information and documents faster, better. So you need to create a good search experience also for the end users. And of course, to help you choose what to migrate, you should create an inventory over what to migrate. And this is really easy. If you don't use like a third-party tool, you can just use the PowerShell commandlet, which I have here. Let us just go to it here. To this PowerShell commandlet here. Let's see. Can we see it now? Yeah, like this. With get SP web application, and then you just add the name of your web application, and you just use the command get the SharePoint site and get the SharePoint web, and then you choose what type of fields you want to export to your inventory. So of course here I choose to have the title, the URL, the ID, and the parent web, and I can also add more. I could also add here web template, for instance. And here also, of course, I will run some inventory on how often is the site used, when was it last used, because maybe if the site isn't used that often, maybe you can actually just change it to, or move it to an archive instead of having it in a live environment. So we can actually jump fast into my environment here, and we can try to actually run this one to see how the result will be. I hope everybody can still see my screen. So here I just open up PowerShell and I just paste this here, and now it will create an inventory file for me. We can see it up here. We'll just open it in Notepad++ for now. And there you can actually see that we get all the data out from my SharePoint environment. So then you can actually start to think, how can I reorganize this? You can also, of course, check if the site is like a site collection, a sub-site, or what kind of site it is, and then from there you can actually decide how to recreate everything. And you have the possibility, of course, to recreate all of the site structure, and then to use like a script from some of the third-party vendors to actually map your site from how it looks in your SharePoint environment today and to the site where you want everything to be stored in the new environment. This is my best advice to everybody who is listening. You should use time on this. You should use time on recreating and remapping your site structure to make it best practice. Because I'm really sure that everybody was doing some not too clever decisions when they was running with SharePoint the first time, and used this opportunity to change those mistakes which you was doing before. Because you have learned a lot from the process which you had, so make sure that whatever you have learned will be implemented in the new SharePoint environment. So of course you need then to decide how you should migrate the data, and this is just part of it, because probably you have maybe run some custom code or something on your SharePoint 2013 environment, and you need also then to figure out how can we transform this code to a code that will work and run in SharePoint Online, because of course in SharePoint Online you don't have the same rights which you had on your on-prem environment, so you need to write all your code and all your functions in a different way. But when it comes to moving your data from A to B, you also have two options. You can actually write your own code to move it, or you can actually write some code that will recreate the site structure, how it should be, and then you can manually sit and move things yourself. Or you can write your own code that does it automatically for you. Or of course, like most people are doing, they're buying a third-party tool. Then of course you need to know which of this tool will be the correct for one for you. Either it should be ShareGate, or it should be APoint, or Metalogix, or Dell. You need to kind of either test them to see which will be better for you, or if you have like a partner agreement with one of them, you should at least check out that one first. And of course, it depends from where you should migrate and to where you should migrate, because, for instance, APoint, they are even supporting migrating from Lotus Notes to SharePoint Online. So that is something not everybody else is handling. So this is something you need to look into for sure. And ShareGate, on the other side, they have like a different license structure. So they're actually just buying the product, and then you as a customer, or you as a consultant like myself, is owning that license. So it's for one user to use it, and you don't need to pay anything extra for the amount of data which you're transforming from your SharePoint on-prem environment to your SharePoint online environment. So all of these different tools, they have their, what shall I say, plus and minuses, so you just need to figure out which one is correct for you. But all these vendors, they're at least really working hard to give us the great tools. So at least if I should do like a migration project, I will try with one of these tools first, see if the tool is supporting all my scenarios, or maybe you need to run the tool just to copy the data from A to B, and then you need to write some code yourself to clean it up or fix it when it comes to your to your target environment. So I hope everything is been clear for you guys so far. As mentioned before, I hope you will ask some questions for the question Q&A later. And of course, when it comes to migrating and step 4, don't migrate as is. Use this opportunity to recreate your SharePoint environment and use time to choose the right tool to migrate the data. It's actually a guy which have created like an Excel which is actually comparing the different tools. You will find it if you search Google, or I can include it in the end presentation, which I will upload to SlideShare, so you can actually just click it and see it from there. Of course, that leaves one tip for today, and that tip is to enhance the new platform. That is like really important, because what for shall you move from on-prem to the cloud, or from a 2010 environment SharePoint to 2013, if you wouldn't utilize the new features that that platform gives you. For instance, in Office 365, you have the next generation portals. You have, for instance, the video portal. You have Delve. You have Office Graph. You have a lot of different things there, which actually, if you should move to the cloud, you should actually make sure that to start to use that will be a part of the project as well. So actually, you will give something extra to the end user. They will get something more which they didn't have before. And that is, of course, like the key to any kind of migration project, that you will give some extra value to your end users. It's exactly the same as me as a consultant. When I'm running projects for my customer, of course, if I will manage to give them something extra to my customers, of course, the customer will be much more happy than if I wouldn't be able to do it. So make sure that you know, we had like earlier we was seeing that one part of the step is to analyze the data. Even more important is the fact that you analyze your target environment. You will check everything which is running there. Check if you have some custom code running, some farm solutions, or some assembly information which you need to migrate also. And then you need to know your target environment, because to be able to migrate from something to something, you need to know both sources. You need to know a lot about the data structure and everything in your target in your source environment, and then you need to know what will I get in the source environment, because of course, in the target environment, because of course things is running a little differently in Office 365 than how they run on premise. So this is something you need to know, because maybe you need to rewrite your code, maybe you need to rewrite your site structure, or maybe you need just to do things differently just because it's in the cloud. So that's why you need to know also how your end environment will look like, how the target environment will look like. So the step 5 is make sure to use the new functionalities. There's no reason to upgrade or migrate to a new version if you wouldn't use what is new. And you need to know what is there. You need to know what's in it for you. So a couple of more friendly advices. It was 5 steps was really few steps, but that's the key steps. But I want to give you some more. I want to give you a couple of extra friendly advices on the way. So make sure that you will succeed with your migration projects. And that is, one of them is, before any migration project, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Because usually the bigger picture is a lot more complicated than what you thought it would be when you were starting with the project. And some lesson learned from when I was doing my migration project. You need to have a pre-migration analysis at the beginning of the project, so you will actually know more about what you should transfer. You need to build your project plan based on what you find in that pre-migration analytic phase. And of course, you need to create a content and customization inventory. You need to know where is your content stored, how much have you stored in which site and which library. And of course, you need to know what kind of customization have been done to your environment to be able to replicate it and change it in your target environment. Some key takeaways. You should start with the easy workflows. You should be sure to understand the environment, the custom solution, the different site types, and so on and so forth. You should recreate the site structure if it's necessary. Usually it's a good thing at least to do a review of it, to look at it and see if is this optimal or can we do it better. Of course, you should minimize how much data you should migrate. Don't move old crap if the documents isn't used, if things haven't been used for quite a long time. You don't need to move it. Then copy it on a USB drive or put it in like an archive or a OneDrive OneDrive folder for that matter. So at least you have everything. But don't move the stuff which have never been used. So make sure that you don't move more than you have to. You need to create, as I mentioned before, your governance strategy. And of course, you need to define what will be acceptable for the target users when it comes to the experience, how things is working after the migration has been finishing. So you need to do that before. Make sure that everything is accepted from the end users before you start the migration project. And of course, think through the permissions, because probably things have changed. Maybe some have quit your company and someone forgot to remove this person or to remove the access rights. And of course, you should scale your migration process accordingly to best practice. And I also want to invite you all to the Modern Workplace Summit, which my company, Knowledge Factory, is hosting here in Norway on 8th and 9th of September. The fee is 4,000 Norwegian kroners. That's really good for a 2-day event where we are throwing Office 365, Skype for business, Windows 10, and productivity days. We have 5 tracks actually to cover all that over 2 days. We have 25 MVPs coming, myself included. And of course, now we are ready to migrate your SharePoint environment. If not, you can always call me. My name is Knut, and thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope at least you got some ideas on how you can easily with 5 steps migrate to SharePoint Online.
Perfect. Thank you, Knut. That was incredibly helpful, and I think a lot of good pieces can be taken out of this presentation.
Thank you so much for that.
So I guess I'll go ahead and make myself presenter now.
Yes, you can do that, please.
Okay. All right, and I'll get started. Just a short presentation on how you can use analytics to assist your migration process. So I'll go ahead and go over this last topic this morning, and then we'll talk about how several of the items that Knut was discussing can be tied into analytics, and how analytics can really help when you're trying to do things like improve the migration process. Of course, I see there are a few questions so far, but if there are any more, feel free to send them over in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll bring back Knut in a few moments to go over these questions as well. So first of all, why do we even need analytics when we're talking about SharePoint Online migration? The key here is that you can only manage what you measure. So only can we know what's going on during the migration process, define if it was successful, measure if people are using the new environment, and whether adoption is increasing, is by being able to measure what's going on. And that's really the end goal that we help our customers with. How can we measure the deployment, analyze it, and then help customers improve their environments based on what's actually going on? So if we break this down a little bit more into some subcategories, we're going to talk about specifically tracking migration with analytics. So over the course of the steps, so there's 3 steps that are involved. So it's prior to migration, during the migration process, and after. And these 3 steps can be monitored using 3 methods, which are planning, testing, and then of course using the right tools. So when we talk about the types of metrics you can use prior to migration, there's 2 metrics that come to mind, and of course there are many that you can use, but these are kind of 2 of the most helpful ones if you're starting out. And as Knut mentioned, migrating as is with the platform. This is something that we want to try to avoid because we want to try to migrate the content and improve the next platform. So analytics can really help with this. So the first metric that you can use is generating an unused content report. And it's very helpful for detecting hundreds and thousands of site collections that have not been accessed. Detecting unused sites is also important for organizing and minimizing the amount of content you migrate. And reports can detect lists, libraries, and list items that are not popular, perhaps videos that people haven't been watching, and documents that aren't currently being used. So you can find out with analytics where these pieces of content are and decide whether or not you want to migrate them. With navigation reports, if your organization wants to create a new page in the upcoming portal, like a home page, for example, you might want to ask yourself if you want to use the same navigation bar that was used in the previous version of SharePoint, and what if there are links and buttons that people just aren't clicking on. So on a home page, the space is quite limited. So this means that it's really important to link the most popular content for your users in this space. And by generating most popular content reports, you can determine what aspects of the SharePoint pages you would like to migrate and which aspects are no longer relevant to the users. So this can ensure that you're building a better navigation tool within the new environment as well. Moving on towards during the migration process. So we have usage trends. And during the migration process, you can generate usage trends reports to go ahead and see the usage trends of, say, you have Farm A versus Farm B. And by tracking multiple environments at the same time, you can monitor whether usage trends are starting to increase in the latter version of SharePoint in order to ensure that your migration is effective and that people are using the new version. With unique users, reports can offer insights on the top users in the new environment and they can be an effective resource for knowing who to empower. As Knut mentioned, the SharePoint superheroes. So detecting who these superheroes are is made really simple with analytics. So you can easily turn these top users into evangelists or site owners because you know from your metrics that these are the most active people in these specific environments. You can also use a unique groups report, and with unique groups you can approach groups based upon those who are sharing less than others, and you can allocate training budgets in order to better target them because they are using the portal less than, say, other groups. And I know I'm moving pretty quickly, but we're running a little bit short on time, so moving towards the after migration process. So first we want to talk about adoption of the new portal. So the biggest challenge in any migration is making sure that people are utilizing the new tool. So a large amount of time, effort, budget is dedicated to purchasing new licenses, migrating content, training users, etc. So now there is a need to show that users are leveraging the new portal and that there is a return on investment from the migration. So using these types of adoption reports that we provide, you can show this to management to show that users either are using the new portal or try to allocate training for them if they're not. And you can use surveying tools to ask users what their challenges are. So what do they need from the portal? What would they like to see in this new version? And the surveying tool can really collect real-time feedback from users as they experience SharePoint. And finally, you have groups activity, and creating a groups activity report can give you an idea of what groups are active and engaging with content and users and which groups you can further target for training. And a wealth of types of reports can be used at this point to measure the success of new navigation, monitoring new applications, including search and my sites, and to track individual applications as well. But at this point, analytics are vital throughout all stages of migration. So by becoming aware of these challenges within the migration process, you can take your SharePoint migration by the reins and ensure that your new version is optimized for adoption, collaboration, and the engagement of your users. Okay. So quickly now, I'll show you a brief example of these metrics, and then we'll conclude in a few moments with some Q&A. So this is an example of an analytics dashboard. On the left-hand side, you can see the entire hierarchy within SharePoint. So here we're tracking a 2010 farm, a 2013 farm, and also a SharePoint Online tenant. And we can also see any object here, an entire farm, a site, a page, and so forth, to get these instant dashboards showing us data that we were just talking about. So things like popular content or top search phrases, like things that people cannot find, for example. Perhaps they can't find them in the new portal. And from here, we can also integrate with Microsoft Power BI, which is a really great interface and a really great way to analyze all of this data and really makes it easy to consume and use. So I have this dashboard here with lots of different widgets, and it's just really aesthetically pleasing as far as reporting goes. And I wanted to show you how Power BI has this amazing Ask a Question box, where here, instead of creating new dashboards and new reports, we can simply type in whatever we want to find out. So for example, page views by browser, and then by searching page views by browser, and then right away, in a very ad hoc way, we receive an instant metric showing us what browsers people are using. So if they shouldn't be using Firefox, for example, in the new version, we can see that that's our third browser right here, and over 2,906 page views were made using Firefox. So that's just a quick example for some of the metrics that can be provided here to assist you in the migration process. And we have about 10 minutes till the end of our time here today. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the questions. And if you didn't have time to send over your questions, you can feel free to type those in now in the GoToWebinar panel. And I'll just give you guys just a second to enter in some questions.
I can see that there was at least one question coming in.
Right.
From Daryl Rasmussen. So if you could give me back the screen, I can actually show him an option here. So
sure. Just one moment.
Yeah. Also. Yeah, show my screen. So one question which came in the questions asked from Daryl is that what are my thoughts with respect to migrating content types? Does it make sense to do a full review of list content types and see if they should be converted and consolidated to site-level content types and move to the content type hub? How hard is that? So yes is the fast answer. Yes, I will always look on a review of the content types as well, especially when it comes to different libraries and different lists. Maybe people have done the same things in many different lists, so then it's a good idea to start to use term set, for instance, or to kind of use the same content type. I'm actually now running a migration from 2010 to 2013 for Norwegian People's Aid. We actually have created a migration tool that uses the ShareGate engine to optimize the migration process, so to say. So as you can see on my screen now, we have like actually my input field file to this tool. So we can see like the title here. We have the type, so SC stands for site collection. I can try to zoom in because probably it's a little bit small for you guys on the screen. And SS is a subsite. Then we have a library and we have forms and lists. So of course we have some actions here which I deal with my code. We have the source size and the target site here. And then if we go a little bit longer to the right, we can see that I can actually rename the source library and the target library all from this code as well. And I will also be able to actually remap the content type also from the default content type to the new content type. All of this stuff I've created a tool for with some PowerShell and some C# code, which is actually using the ShareGate engine to actually optimize all the migrating process. So actually I can have a list with a lot of different sites, which is having one site structure in the target in the source environment, and it can be totally different in the source environment. So yes, I will for sure actually recommend that. And then we got from RT Grantham, we got a different question. Can you share any business case studies on how the tool has been used? Okay, probably which tool are you talking about? My tool, or because that one is still in the production?
Sure. As far as
share my ShareGate plugin, yeah, that I can do for sure. From Daryl, my ShareGate plugin, if people will just write to me an email, I will be able to set up like either a webinar with them so I can show them, or I can blog about it on my blog.
Great. And if this is a question for Cardiolog, we have many business case studies on our website, so feel free to visit our website and visit our case studies. We have many examples there, and also feel free to just shoot us an email or a tweet, and we can send you something as well through email. All right. So I think that's all the questions that we have thus far. Again, Knut, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. Very powerful presentation. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Molly, and thank you to all the good questions. It's always good to have like some questions when you hold a presentation. That means that people was listening and that they got something from it, and it was really good to see your tool as well. I think it can actually add a lot of possibilities to any kind of migration project, because you need to have like an idea of how your source environment is looking, and looks like your tool will help a lot on that. So that's really good.
Great. And again, you can reach Knut at sharepointblog.no or by Twitter or by email. I do see that there was one question that we didn't have time to get to, so feel free to send that over to Knut in that way. And again, you can reach us at intlock.com. If you have any questions, comments, etc., we'll be happy to answer them. And again, we'll be sending out this recording